This is not me going out there and jinxing the Edmonton Oilers, nor is it me backtracking on the comments I made literally last night talking about the Florida Panthers. In this video, what I wanted to do was go over the entire idea, the notion, the conversation that is stirred up on social media as to whether or not the Edmonton Oilers are really Canada's team, quote unquote. It's a very peculiar subject, and it's one that we don't really have the chance to talk about all too often. But when Canadian teams find themselves in positions like these, where they're one game away from the Stanley Cup Finals, and as a result, 5 wins away from bringing the Stanley Cup back to Canada for the first time in 30 years, when it does happen, we have ourselves a little debate every time. And I say every time as if this happens a lot. No, it doesn't happen often, but we did have ourselves this debate back in 2021. When Montreal made the finals against the Tampa Bay Lightning, oh, is this Canada's team going out there and playing off against the reigning Stanley Cup champions? They just defeated Vegas, they just beat the North Division teams, they literally are the only remaining Canadian team left, so what's the deal here? I think a lot of Canada outside of Montreal, just based off of my perception, was supporting them, mostly because they didn't want to see Tampa win back-to-back, and also because, hey, it'd be cool to see an underdog story like Montreal go out there and accomplish something with Shea Weber and Carey Price on the team. They had a nice vibe going to them, and a lot of people, I'd say, in this country were, for the most part, okay with the Habs winning. In 2011, when the Vancouver Canucks made the Stanley Cup Finals, Vancouver and British Columbia as a whole, they seem to have been the only areas of the country that was actually cheering for the Canucks. They were the big bad bully Canucks back in this time frame because they had guys like Ryan Kesler, Alex Burrows, Maxime Lapierre, Kevin Bieksa that were absolute crap disturbers. They were tough to play against, they were super antagonistic, and the Vancouver Canucks as a team were just very unlikable. Plus, the fact that they were so good, you had 2 Art Ross winners, a Selke winner, and multiple 40-goal, 100-point seasons out of these players. Vancouver was such an unlikable team that when they were going up against Boston, pretty much the rest of Canada was like, nah, sorry, we want Boston to win this one. GTFO Vancouver. But this time around, in 2024, again, I'm not saying the Oilers are in the finals. I actually said they would beat the Dallas Stars in 7 in my prediction video, so they could very well lose today, and I'm still gonna, feel the same about it. But either way, when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers, we have seen a bunch of conversations on different parts of social media from fans of recently eliminated teams going out there and saying, hey, let's go Oilers. Pretty much for the main reason that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are in need of their chip. This is not an Edmonton-specific thing. This is, hey, they have a legacy of players they need to cement, and when it comes to Draisaitl and McDavid, this is the closest they have ever been to sniffing that championship. They made the 3rd round a few years ago, but then they got swept by Colorado. Not a great outlook, and certainly not the way you want to be remembered by when people go out there and say, hey, yeah, Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, they had such a great career in Edmonton. And Draisaitl, if he leaves in free agency in a little bit, he goes to Boston or he goes to San Jose or something, you don't want his legacy with Edmonton to be that of a multi-time award-winning player who just couldn't get past the 3rd round and even get a win in that respect. Now they've got 3, and they're 1 win away from making the dance. And honestly, if I had to go out there and just summarize what I'm seeing, this of course could be incorrect, you can have different experiences, let me know in the comment section below, but just based off of what I'm seeing, I think most of Canada is okay with the idea of Edmonton finally getting over that hump and getting Connor McDavid that chip. But when it comes to Vancouver fans, I feel like a lot of them are still kinda maybe salty a little bit. And of course I understand that perspective. I mean, the Oilers literally eliminated Vancouver, but then again, did the Oilers eliminate Vancouver or did Vancouver eliminate Vancouver? Okay, we've already done this song and dance before. The fact that the Canucks did not show up to play in the final 2 games of that series was very disappointing, but I will say, just based off of my personal experience, there are some Canucks fans that I am stumbling across in my personal life and on my digital social life that are saying, hey, even though the Oilers beat the Vancouver Canucks and I'm a Canucks diehard, I'm still cheering for Edmonton to win because Canada. Seems like that Boston Pizza commercial really started to have a positive effect here, but I will say there are still a bunch of other Canucks fans that are salty about that. Hey, screw that. No way are you going to catch me cheering with the fans that we've always cheered against. Screw Edmonton, go Dallas, go Florida, etc., etc. We're still seeing a bunch of Canucks fans over here exhibiting that kind of thought process. And I will say, I think a lot of that does have to be attributed to the fact that Vancouver is just Vancouver, and a lot of Canucks fans are super cynical. We were in a really bad spot for years. Vancouver fans were not treated nicely by this hockey team for the better part of, let's just say, 6-7 years under Jim Benning. And so the one time they actually do have themselves fans in the building, home playoff games, they look really good, and they have themselves the talent to justify going on a run. The fact that they blew a 3-2 series lead to the Oilers and looked embarrassing in Game 6 and Game 7, it left a lot of Canucks fans with a sour taste in their mouths. Maybe because of their own personal disgust with the team, or because they just did not like the opponent. Who really knows? At the end of the day, though, I'd say that for the most part, the Boston Pizza commercials are working. It does seem a lot like other fans of differing fan bases are okay with it. Spare except for the Calgary fans. I mean, they're kind of a ruthless bunch as well. I think it goes without saying that Calgary would always be cheering against Edmonton. But at the same time, I feel like there is sort of not a unanimous sentiment. Like, there still are some Flames fans that are like, okay, I mean, if they win, great, the cup's back in Canada, but still, it's not like they prefer it to be Edmonton bringing the cup back home for the first time in 30 years on this side of the border, but it is kind of an interesting thing to think about. I think the overdue narrative of McDavid and Draisaitl makes it a lot easier for most Canadian fans, especially since, the clock is ticking here for some of these guys. They're not going to be in this age range forever, they're not going to be making this amount of money forever, and for the Oilers, they need to get that dub. It does not matter how they get it. Connor McDavid needs a gosh darn cup with Leon Draisaitl. And it looks like the Dallas Stars will have 2 games to prove them otherwise, and maybe even the Florida Panthers, who really knows. So I'll just say this as well to end off this video. I kind of don't really care who wins in the West, but I will say I did think Edmonton was going to take it. In the East, I'm actually pulling for the Panthers. I do think they have what it takes to win, and I also would prefer them to win too. Oliver Ekman-Larsson winning a Stanley Cup would be awesome. And then you have yourselves the other stories there. Matthew Tkachuk, the big trade that sent him over, he's doing well. Sergei Bobrovsky, Tarasenko, the Russian dudes. I love the Finns as well. Barkov, Lundell, Luosterainen. Nico Mikkola, too. Lots of good names on the Florida Panthers that I think could cement themselves as good champions. But when it comes to the Edmonton conversation, hey, if the Oilers end up playing the Panthers in the finals, I have no idea who's going to win, but I will probably personally want to see Florida win. Not because I hate Edmonton, which, I kind of do because I'm a Canucks fan, but I just kind of like to see that narrative instead of a whole bunch of Florida teams being Stanley Cup champions in the span of a few years. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that Edmonton is legitimately Canada's team? And do you think they are the best hope that Canada has for bringing Lord Stanley home this side of the border since 30 years ago? The Canadian teams have had their chances at sealing the deal, but they could not get it done. Edmonton in 2006, you had the Vancouver Canucks in 2011, Montreal Canadiens in 2021. It's been a while for Canadian teams, but of course that's the distribution of talent across the league. There are only 7 Canadian teams after all. But thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.